Welcome, everybody. I'm Jesse Spencer-Smith. I'm Chief Data Scientist and Director of the Data Science Institute. And today we're going to be talking about AI-assisted programming. And I'd like to start actually by first getting an idea of, and just through some voting through here. And we can vote with, let's see what you got for your available options here. Let's see, I think that you have a raise hand. Yeah, I don't see the upvote or the other, but the raised hand. So go ahead and give me a raise your hand if you are completely new to programming. You haven't programmed a lick, and great. Absolutely fantastic. Yay. Fantastic. So hands up. All right, go ahead and leave your hands up. Raise your hand if you've programmed like for a class, you had to do some programming for it, but no one would ever say to you, hey, you're a programming jockey. So you've made it happen. Yep. All right, excellent. All right, yeah, so about half. Fantastic, great. Go ahead and take your hands down then. Go ahead and you can lower your hands, and I have another question for you. So, raise your hand if you have a lot of programming experience. Okay. Anybody else? I suppose I need to raise my hand. Here, I'm going to raise my hand. So anybody else have? Okay. So here's a funny thing. What we're going to talk about today, and you can lower your hands now. Thank you very much for doing that. What we're going to talk about today is how to use AI assistance when you're programming. The funny thing is that the folks who've had no programming and the folks who've had some programming are going to have an easier time of it than the people who have a lot of programming. And that's because it can be a very difficult thing to go into this and to really use AI-assisted coding well if you're an extremely strong programmer. Because if you're a strong programmer, the very first thing that comes to mind is you're going to sit down with that blank page and you're going to see if you can figure it out. The model that we have here is very different. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to take you through sort of the rationale for AI-assisted coding, what it looks like. We're going to talk about the entire enterprise of doing programming. And then we're going to try some examples, and we're going to create some solutions from complete scratch, just from the very, very beginning. Now, if you're brand new to programming, you haven't done anything at all before, you're going to need a few bits and pieces, additional bits and pieces. There's only so much that we can do in 45 minutes. But know that we will have workshops, later workshops that you can participate in that will take you further along the way. And one of these is going to be what we call our AI Winter. And that's going to be in January 2nd through 5th. And we start with AI-assisted programming, and then we go all the way up to training large language models. So there's a lot we cover, but especially that first couple of hours of January 2nd is a great way to get onboarded. But know that the other thing that you can do is you can come by the Data Science Institute. We're at 19th and Grand any Friday between 10 and noon, and except for next Friday. We're not going to do next Friday because we're going to have an overlap with something else we're doing. But otherwise, you can come by 10 to 12, 19th and Grand, and we can walk you through and help you get started. But the other thing you can do is you can actually ask the AI, what steps do I take next? AI is going to be the way to tackle problems. But let's go ahead and take a step back and let's talk about why we program. So anybody have an idea why do we program? Why do we make computer programs? Why do you make computer programs? By the way, this is my tea. I pull out my tea whenever I'm signaling to you that I'm going to wait until somebody answers. Why do we program?
To solve a problem.
Josh, that's fantastic. That's it. Exactly right. Really, what we want to do is we want to solve a problem, right? We want to do something. Sometimes you might want to program. Oh, that's another great one, Irma. To do something faster than I could do it manually. That's another. So sometimes it's something we couldn't do at all. Sometimes we want to do something faster than we could do manually. But really what it comes down to is we want to get someplace, we want to solve a problem, we want to do something. So it's important to remember computer programming has always been a means to an end. It could be to develop a better understanding of something by formalizing it as a computer program. It could be solving a problem, but it's always been a means to an end. And now we're in a state of our development as a sentient species where now we have some help. So we don't have to just depend on our own brains for this. Now we have generative AI, which can help us much more quickly get to the solution. But it turns out that computer programming is still a critical piece, because the reason why we did computer programming was that we could clearly specify exactly what we wanted to do and how we wanted it done. And then we could look at that code and we can see whether it is what we anticipated. We can run the code, we can do tests on it. So it's a formalized way of having a computer do exactly what we say. So think about what happens when we ask for a large language model to do something. Has anybody here, raise your hand, has anybody here asked a large language model for an answer for something or to do something and it came up with something wacko? So, yeah, like it made up something. Dirk, would you care to share what did you get? What happened?
I don't remember in particular exactly what it said, but I do remember it was it made something up. I had asked it some silly question about like how something works, and it made something up that didn't exactly fit, and I think it gave fake sources as well.
And my favorite is the fake sources, because the fake sources sound so good. And if those only existed, that'd be exactly what you'd needed. Yeah. Large language models produce plausible output, likely output. And that's exactly what we don't want when we are trying to solve a problem. So if we're trying to count things, manually sort things, write something, we want to collect data in some way, we want this to be exactly right. So we still need computer programming. So what do? We ask the large language model to write computer programs. And then now we have a couple of good handles on things. One, we can try running the program to see if it did what we expected it to do. And if it doesn't, or if it doesn't run, then we can report back to the large language model and say, this didn't work. Or I got a different answer than what I wanted. When I run this, I want to see this. So large language models know how to work with that. They'll apologize, and then they will rewrite. So computer programming still plays a role and will continue to play a role, because that's how we get down to the brass tacks. What exactly do we want to have done? Show me exactly how it was done so I can trace through and make sure that you're not making stuff up and this is exactly what we wanted it to do. So that's how we need to think about programming. Programming is now playing this special role. So back in the day, there was this thing called low code. And low code meant you could like drag and drop things together, and it was okay, but boy, it took a lot of effort. But an important thing to remember of that is really what you're trying to get at, what low code was trying to get at, was effective application logic. You wanted to be able to see the logic and make sure that you were solving the problem as you wanted to have it solved. And then what's really important is programming languages are just tools. So the syntax and all the very particular things that can drive you crazy about a computer programming language, it's merely a way of expressing the solution. It is all about problem solving. So, and it's all about fulfilling your needs. So we're going to do a couple of things here. We're going to, first, we're going to concentrate on, here, we're going to go back here. We're going to concentrate on the problems. We're going to try out some problems. And we're going to use the large language models to write some solutions for us. And at the same time, then we're going to have the large language model explain things to us. But know that you don't have to go all the way deep down. There's going to be a level at which you can stop. Some things, you take it for granted that they're going to work. When you get into a car you know that you're going to, if it's an old style, you know, one of those old style combustion engine cars, you're probably gonna have to put the key in and turn it, and then the engine's gonna fire up. If it's an electric car, you're gonna get in with your key fob or with your phone, and it's going to greet you. You don't have to worry about how the car booted up or how the engine turned over. You're gonna be pretty comfortable with that it's going to work, and that when you shift it into drive, it's gonna move. Often our solutions in computer programming look like that. We use libraries, we use these high-level abstractions that will do things for us, and we don't have to understand exactly how things work, and that's fine. Do know, though, that there's a way for you to develop a mental model that will help you understand programming better. And we don't have time to do that, but I mentioned our AI winter where we're going to do this. And you can also drop by, and we're happy to talk to you about it here on Fridays from 10 to 12. But the other thing to keep in mind is you can learn about programming by thinking at this high level. There's a way to think about programming so you don't have to dive into the syntax. And this turns out to be a really helpful way to think about programming so you can learn better from the large language models about what's happening in programs. Again, we're not going to quite do that today, but know that this exists, this mental model to help you learn faster and learn better. So there's a path for you if you want to really learn how to program, and also so you can conceivably program on your own and program with the assistance of AIs. So before we jump into the problem solving, do you have questions? Yes, Carl.
I opened that link to that you had on the QR code a few slides ago, and it took me to something called the Python standard library. Could you just define that, please?
Sure. So Python's, and was it this one? Yeah, it's the same QR code. Python standard library is all of those high-level abstractions. So you get to say things like, hey, I want the time. And you don't have to know that what's happening is it's detecting that it's going to the low-level operating system of whatever operating system you're on, whether it's Linux or whether it's Windows, and it's actually calling the appropriate low-level the appropriate low-level calls to actually determine from the CPU what time it is. You don't have to know that. All they have to know is you can say time, and it gives you the information. Same thing with opening files, same thing with maybe showing a graph. These are high-level abstractions that are part, and this one is part of every Python install, because actually the high-level calls that you're making are written in other Python, sometimes C or C++ underneath that, and all that's hidden. Most people don't ever go that deep. You don't need to. So you're kind of brought up here. Now what's happening now is now you're going to have an AI intermediary. So now you're going to be able to go even higher, where what you're going to be doing is you're going to describe the problem, then it's going to write code, which is then you're going to call these libraries, which is then going to go down to that low-level machine level that it needs to get to. So these Python libraries are that intermediate level that most people don't go into necessarily, but that can help you get stuff done. Does that answer your question?
It does, yeah. Thank you.
Great. Absolutely. Other questions from anyone else? All right. Then let's go and take a look and see what it looks like when we ask an AI to help us code. So I'll start out. Oh, TBD, do you have a question? No. Okay, I'm going to go and mute you. So there are a number of ways that AIs can help us code. For a number of years now, we've actually had, for about 2 years, 2.5 years, we've had the ability, if you were already a programmer, that you could have a trained model that could help you finish a function. So if you program some, you know what functions are. And for a couple of years now, we've had models that you can start writing the code, or you could write in a comment what you wanted it to do, and then it'd fill in that for you. So we've had that for a while, and that was good, but that only speeds you up to a certain point. You still had to come up with the idea of the function and the larger structure of the model itself. Then large language models came around where you could just describe what you wanted to have done, and then it writes the full code for you. And that's what we're going to look at next. So one thing that you're going to, for this, you'll be able to use pretty much any large language model. Let me go over here and get this set up here. Let me go ahead and start my share one more time. Here we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my chat GPT, chat.openai.com. If you don't have an account, you should get an account. You can do a paid account. I have Chat GPT Plus, so it's a paid account that gives me a lot more turns on GPT-4. It also gives me a couple of other things that are really helpful. I'm going to just stick with the default for right now. And at this point, your phones ought to be going off. This is the national alert test. I'll give it a moment to stop. So this was a test of the National Wireless Emergency Alert System. We were warned that this was going to be happening. And actually, it's a few minutes late, which is, I suppose, okay. So let's give just a moment for people's phones to finish going off. Let your blood pressures go back down. All right. So Chat Plus gives you more turns on GPT-4. Oh, is it blocking again? And it's yes, and that could entirely be happening. This happened last time. If you would please go ahead and give a here's the link for it. VUMC, you're always going to run into this. So give me a show of hands if you're on the network, on the Vanderbilt University network, and if you're being blocked right now. So give me a show of hands if you're on the Vanderbilt University network and if you're getting blocked. Interesting. Okay. So Gail, you were the only one. I'm not too sure why. But thank you for letting me know. And Gail, maybe if we have time, we'll touch base right after this because I'm curious about how that happened. All right. So let me ask this. Has anyone ever had to program an experiment? Oh, thank you, Gail. Yes, you disconnected the VPN and now you're in. I may just be if you're only on the VPN. If you're on the actual physical network here, it may work. Has anyone had to like program an interactive experiment? Okay, then maybe I'll switch. Somebody give me, I have an example that I'm going to program, but I'm going to see if I can get an example from somebody else. Can somebody, anyone, describe something, a program that you might like to write?
So I know the VUMC side, we've been toying with the idea of a piece of software that would essentially generate CV letters based off of essentially faculty information stored in.
Ooh. That's a really nice one. Actually, that might be, So you could definitely do that with a large language model, but if you have organized elements, okay. I like that one, Josh. I'm going to see if I can get another one because I'll have to generate some CVs to do that, which we can do.
Oh, good point.
Yeah. So somebody give me another thing that you might like to program. What problem do you have that you want to, you're here for a reason. So what problem do you want to solve?
Okay, can I describe a situation?
Please.
Okay, so let's say you're pulling all positive blood cultures and
Okay.
you're looking for the organisms. And I have a table that has These organisms are called skin contaminants. And if a patient has more than one positive blood culture where you've got the same organism 2 times, then I want to flag it as it to investigate it for ambulatory collapses is
Okay.
essentially. But they can't just have one; they have to have 2.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good one. Let me go ahead and I'll introduce another capability here then. I'll tell you what, Gail, I'm gonna do your example. I'm gonna do a simple a different example, and then I'm come back to your example because I need to generate some fake data for you.
Okay, cool.
I'm gonna show you how to do that. All right.
As
Yes,
I
go
have
ahead.
a situation where we wanted an automatic download of an Excel file from RedCap to go into the OneDrive or a
Ooh.
SharePoint. Is it something we can do?
Let's
feasible?
try. Let's so I'm going to go ahead and copy that directly from the chat, Nandini. Is that correct, Nandini? Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
Excellent, great. I need to do an automatic download of an Excel file from RedCap to OneDrive. Can you write a Python program that can do this? Right, simple. So I haven't specified a whole lot here, right? So I'm not being very precise about exactly what I want to do, but I could do this. Let's see what it does all on its own, and then we can give you another prompt that you can use, and so you can get exactly what you need. But let's run this. This is using GPT-4, step-by-step process with Python code to automatically download an Excel file from RedCap. Okay, so it knows about the RedCap API. Okay, now it's saying replace the placeholders with your actual domain and API token. Yeah, so Nandini, if you can cut and paste your API token. No, I'm joking. Never do that.
Hey, what's up?
I want to add a
Sorry.
to channel to the image.
Uh-huh.
I forgot how to do it.
And Sean, you
even
have a
if
comment?
even if you ask, I don't know that because the problem I'm asking is just very
Yeah, perfect.
in the initial stages, so we are just
Yes.
exploring. So I don't know any
Exactly.
additional details to
No,
it.
that's perfect. Yeah, and it's kind of a joke because API keys should never be shared publicly. So, all right. So actually, so it's given us some code. We don't know if it's going to work yet. As a matter of fact, we know it's not going to work yet because we know that it needs to have additional information that we don't have yet. But it looks like it might be right. So first it actually, and it's telling us what it's doing. Download an Excel. Okay, so first we're going to have to get to the RedCap API. Then we're going to have to upload to OneDrive. And then again, it's asking for additional information. So actually, this is not bad. It might be right. How do we tell if this is correct? How do we tell if it's hallucinating?
Run it.
That's it. If it doesn't run, you tell it didn't run and why. And then you iterate through again. This is often the sticking point, especially for folks who program, and sometimes even for people who do program. Your job now is for you to take this code and to actually run it. Now it goes through here and it says, remember, you've got to install the Python libraries. So now you can say, I have never programmed before. Is there a place I can run this? And can you give me explicit instructions on how to do it? So your job now is to take the code, try running it, and to report back any problems that you have. I told it earlier that it was chief data scientist, so it says, given that you're a chief data scientist, you might have colleagues that can help you with this. Yeah, as a chief data scientist, you really should know how to program, but it's not throwing shade. So it tells you how to install, how to get the libraries, setting up the code. So it can actually take you through very specifically what you need to do. And it's iteration. For anything that you can't get it to do, it generates a problem, an error. You report back to this what the error is that you have. And it will iterate through. The one thing you have to keep in mind is that this model right here, all of the text that it's creating is going against what's called the context window. Once this context window gets past, in this case, it's going to be 8K, I think is the standard that they have for GPT-4 right now. It's going to start forgetting. It'll start getting things very wrong. So notice this, whenever it shows code, it has copy code. So one of the things you're going to want to do is you're going to want to copy that code and put it someplace where you can get to it. If you are, if you're not even to the point where you're programming at all and you don't have something set up for you to be running code, you'll just simply want to save this in a particular location. So let's say that we go, I'm going to create a Google Doc right here. And I'm just going to create just a document right here to simply save in some place all of the code that it's generating. And you can copy and paste back and forth until you have everything there, because even if it completely forgets what you've done, then what you can do is you can start a new chat and you can say, in a previous session, we wrote, I had the problem of needing to automatically download an Excel file from RedCap and then to upload it to OneDrive. You wrote the following code for me, paste. I would like to continue development. So those are the two biggest stumbling blocks. One, you've got to iterate, actually see if it runs and see what you get back. And then you also might need to copy all that code back in. So give me a show of hands. How many people here have a place and would know where to put in code to run code? Okay. Then let me go and show you your other best friend. It's called Google Colab. Google Colab, just like OpenAI, is not secure. You cannot put any private information in here. You are sending this information off. So it's HIPAA, FERPA, nothing can go up to Google Colab that you aren't ready to share, or can go up to OpenAI that you aren't ready to share. So keep that in mind. But we're going to talk about in just a moment how to create synthetic data to get you out of that problem. Where we are is something that's called Google Colab. I'm going to put the link right in here. You'll need to make an account if you don't already have an account. But this is a free way to actually put code in. And this is what's called a notebook. And a notebook has text and maybe even graphs interleaved with code. And what we're going to do is we're going to, it always starts up with like this basic stuff right here. What we're going to do is at the very beginning here, we're going to add a code block, and we're going to be copying in all the code that is generated for us. And we're going to see if we can get through a full solution in just one moment. But if you have code, this won't run because we left out important parts. But this is a way to run the code that the model generates. Let's go and do a toy example so we can see this code actually running. I would like to make a simple program that takes any word I enter and reverses it. Toy example, but I know the code's going to be simple, so we can try it out. It should be in Python. I'm learning programming, so make it good code. Simple Python program takes a word and reverses it. So see, it's actually, oh, it's a little bit of overkill because it's actually creating the main and the function, but it has everything in there. So let's go ahead and, oh, so it says save it to a file, run the program. So it gives you everything and even tells you what it's doing right here. Let's go and just copy and paste it and see if this runs. So we're going to go over here. I'm going to erase what was in here. I'm going to paste in exactly what it has, and I'm going to run it. Okay. And it said a word, but it could be a phrase, right? So I'm going to do a man, a plan, a canal, Panama. Okay. And we're going to enter it, and it's going to reverse it. And it works. A man, a plan, a canal, Panama. Lovely. So this is a cheap and easy way to actually iterate. You don't have to install Python. You can actually just run it right here in Google Colab. The main thing you needed to do was to insert a code block right here, and then you can get to work right there. But let's say I want a little bit more. Can you explain line by line how this works? Okay, defining a new function, accepts a parameter called word. This is a doc string. It's a convention for documentation. So you can see this is not bad. It's still kind of high level. So if you want to, you can say, make your explanation simpler. But remember what I mentioned before, if you really want to learn programming, that's where this comes in. Learning this high-level abstraction first of how to think about programming before you dive into this. But this is not a bad way to do it. This is not a bad way to do it, to have it explained to you. You just might have to iterate through multiple times. All right, so what questions do you have so far? We've defined a problem. We've had it write code. We've pasted it into a free online way for us to run. And now we've had it explain the code to us. Dr. Ya.
This is amazing. Thank you. What are some of the limitations of Google Colab? What could you not expect to get back with certain situations?
Google Colab is pretty darn good. You do have limited compute, especially if you have the free tier. So it has a limited amount of time where it's going to be up and running. If it runs too long, it will shut down. You have, gosh, you don't have gigabytes of memory. You have multiple megabytes. If you have the paid, then you do get a higher tier GPU. We've actually even trained transform models, simple ones, small ones. But at the pro tier, which is $10 a month, you can train a fairly decent size transformer model. So it's not that bad. One of the challenges is if you want to have it, if you want to use GitHub with it, it's a little bit, you have to go roundabout a little bit. If you want to access files, it's going to need to be in a Google Drive, and you have to do some extra coding to mount your drive so it can see it. But beyond that, it's not a bad place to start out, especially as you're learning. Excellent question.
Thank
Other
you so
questions?
much.
Absolutely. Other questions? Yes, Josh.
Yes, can you explain a little bit what you meant by the, I think you said context window that GPT-4 has?
Yes. So all generative AI models have what's called a context length. Beyond this, it loses the thread. So imagine, you have a memory dysfunction and you can only remember the last 5 minutes. So we can have a perfectly brilliant conversation for 5 minutes, but at 5 minutes and 10 seconds, Josh, I'm going to forget your name. And then I'm going to start forgetting what we talked about. And then I'm going to start forgetting that I told you about the problem with the context length, So as that window moves, it's going to lose track of everything that fell off the back end.
Got it. Thank you.
And that has to do with what's called attention in the models. It's the key to how they work. Big work now around creating longer and longer context. There are models that have long context, like Colab has 100,000 tokens. That's about 75,000 words, which turns out to be very handy. This GPT-4, I think, has 8K. There's a version that has 32K tokens, which is a fair number, but know that this is more limited. Other questions?
You mentioned that the the Google Colab, it can read files only from the drive, so it's not like Anaconda where it can go read all the files from your computer.
Right.
So that is the main difference there.
Right. But that's a good point. If you want to set up Anaconda, I am brand new to programming, but I want to set up Anaconda on my, what do you have? Do you have a Mac or a laptop, Mac or a PC?
PC.
Yeah, please give me exact steps. Install it. Now, of course, you can also go to Anaconda, but Anaconda is a distribution of Python plus a bunch of other things, and it can be tricky. It can be tricky to install. So it gives you some pretty good information here. And then if at any point you get stuck because you don't see what it's suggesting, then you can say, I don't see that window, or mine says this. The nice thing about having the model described to you is that it will help you troubleshoot as you're doing it. Other questions?
For Colab, can it run more than Python? Like C++ or R or anything else?
Nope, it is for Colab, it is Python only. Anaconda, you're exactly right. It can run quite a few different languages. The large language model can program in pretty much any language you'd like. The less resource language is not as good, but it can do it. Just may not be as good code. Python is probably going to be the best code that it writes.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Other questions? Well, I promised to show you how to generate synthetic data, so let me get to that. We're going to start a new chat here. What I'm going to show you is only available for Chat Plus, and this is about $20 a month. I think for me, it's the best $20 a month that I could spend. So if you have Chat Plus, then if you hover over the GPT-4, you can just choose what's called Advanced Data Analysis, which is a terrible name. It used to be called Code Interpreter, which is an even more terrible name. Let me tell you what it's doing. Remember how I said that your job when you're coding with the AI is to copy and paste that code into some place where you can execute the code and then report back to GPT-4 when there was an error, that it's not just a one-shot thing. You can't say, oh, program didn't run. You run it, you say, I got this error, and then you report it to GPT-4. What this does is it closes the loop. This enables within GPT-4 a special, very small Python instance that can run Python code. It has some pre-installed libraries to do standard kind of stuff, a lot of which is around data analysis, and that's handy. And then you'll notice, you might have noticed that when I switched to that, it also had a plus here. That means I can upload files now. Again, can you upload students' grades with their identifiers? No, FERPA violation. Can you put up, patient information? No. So this is sending data off. You always have to keep that in mind. But what this can do now is it can help you really close that loop on problem solving as well. So you can say, I need to write a program that uses, and let's see, who was asking me about the results? Is this like skin cultures for
well, positive blood cultures.
Oh, blood. Okay, right. That uses lab results from blood cultures. And I'm going to say for, I'm going to say 20 patients, you know, with 1 to 4 results for common pathogens.
Ooh, excellent.
All right. Can you generate synthetic data? Please include a patient ID, date and time of culture. Anything else, Gail, that you think that we need?
No, that's perfect. That'll work.
Okay, great. Watch what's going to happen. Certainly, I can generate synthetic data for 20 patients, each with 1 to 4 results for common pathogens. The data will include patient ID. For the sake of this example,
Oh, I
I'm going to do
love it.
these things. Notice what it's doing. It took the example and then it started to write the program to solve that. It's writing the code itself in its own little executable box. So it's writing the code and then it's going to give results. Now it's sort of describing what it is to me. So you notice it closed the loop. It didn't just say generate the code and then I had to copy and paste and then report back. It's generating it, reading the results, and then kind of giving it to me. See, now
I
Gail,
love it. That is worth $20.
isn't it? And now we can take this and now we can safely write our program and run it on Google Colab if we want to, or keep on generating it right here. So it's generating all this. Yes, would you like to have this data as a CSV? I'd like a CSV. So I'm going to say I'd like a CSV. So then what it does is, can you guess what it's going to do? I'm thinking it's going to write some code. Yep.
Oh my
It's saving it
gosh.
as a CSV because it knew that we needed a tool to write the CSV, and then it gave us a place for us to download it. So now at this point, we can continue writing the code here. So I can say, using the data above, you know, I want indicator, you know, I want an indicator by patient that shows which patients have 2 or more positives. So we can do that, and then it will start. And we're out of time here, but has can you write the code? Now we can iterate on this. Now it can generate the code, and we can get started with that. So, Greg.
Hi, I noticed that it also it also interpreted your typing when you made some typos as well. Is this so you're correct me if I'm wrong, you are using Chat GPT or chat or an open source version of this AI, but
technically I'm using GPT-4, which is still closed source.
okay.
GPT-4 is like the next generation of Chat GPT, but yes, but it is essentially Chat GPT. It's just the next version.
But should we use the VUMC version of?
Yes.
Yes, and is it
Well,
able to do some
I
of
mean, so VUMC does not like you going out and doing that because they're very concerned, of course, about data leakage there, right? So that's the purpose of the synthetic data. So if you're using synthetic data, you know, there is no patient data because it's all synthetic. If you have actual, so here's the trick. You could do this, and then you could use the VUMC. Then you could run it all internally within your firewall and do that there.
Right.
If you really need to develop with your VUMC approved version of ChatGPT, which is the lower version, its code is not going to be as good. You're going to have to iterate a little bit more with it. But you can absolutely do that. But know that you just won't have that cool ADA, the advanced data analysis. You're going to have to like do that copying and pasting thing, right? So now I did this. So you're going to be the person in the middle.
Okay,
So it'll take you more time, but that's not a terrible thing. And then you're perfectly safe.
great, thanks.
So are you saying that VUMC has a chat GPT internally?
They do. They've struck an agreement, as has Vanderbilt University, with Microsoft Azure to run ChatGPT 3.5. And I think it's an 8K context window. It might be 16. 16 would be great if you had it. But you'll have to check with your folks to see about if you might be able to get access to it.
Oh, thanks.
Yep. And we just got GPT-4 last Wednesday.
Did you actually, you were able to, you
Yes,
touched
we're
it?
up on the 4 instance on VUMC AI chat.
I'm so jealous.
Oh, actually, a question about that. With your
Yeah.
demos you're using for, I think you get like 50 tokens every 3 hours or so. Do you ever run into the wall where you run out of tokens, or do you have like some special?
And you meant 50 turns, right?
Yes, conversational. Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry about that.
I do. I do sometimes. Not frequently though, because I'm often bouncing between different models actually. But yeah, I have to watch it, especially when I'm doing workshops, make sure I don't burn through it before the workshop.
Thank you.
All right, folks, I wanted to keep this to about 45 minutes. I'm happy to take any additional questions that you have, but we'll go and stop here. Anyone who needs to jump off, please do. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much for all your engagement and all your questions. It's been a pleasure spending the last 45 minutes with you and introducing programming. Yes, AI-specific programming. Greg.
Hey, is AI Winter, is that free?
It is.
Good.
Free and open.
Glad to hear that.
Absolutely.
We will get more information on how to sign up.
Yeah, we will. Everyone who's registered for this will send out an email to you to see if you'd like to sign up for a newsletter. That's how you can find out about what's coming up.
Great. Jesse, you've done a great job of presenting this.
Oh, thank
Yeah,
you.
excellent. It was wonderful.
Excellent. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Gail. I
you.
appreciate that.
And AI Windsor is an amazing name.
Right. Yeah, for those of you who don't know, AI Winter was when no one wanted to talk about AI anymore because it didn't quite work. And there were a couple of them. So it's a joy to sort of have, because I was in a couple of those winters. So it's kind of fun to have an AI winter where it's all about how to learn this AI that actually works. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. And thank you for the tip about Google Colab. I just wrote a script to make words come out in rainbow color. Like, this is amazing. Like, this is the best thing I've learned all week. So thank you.
Your kids are going to love that, the rainbow color. Thank you, Irma. Thank you. Thank you, Channing. All right, if there are no additional questions, I will go ahead and I'll start closing this down. Thank you very much. Thanks, Craig. Sangrita, thank you. Hope you all have a good day. Take care. Thank you, Dr. Ya.